The theme for the month of March, the consistency of change. Anything that stays the same is change itself, right? And the theme today, be the change, being the change. Be the change you wish to see in the world. Everybody knows that as Mahatma Gandhi's sentence. Well, I got in late last night from my own classes, was in Encinitas doing my ministerial classes, following in the steps of dear Reverend Myrna. So we do our weekend things, and then we come show up and try to look spunky. And and so it was kind of interesting the last couple of days being separated, like in that space, and then trying to write a talk, and writing a talk on the airplane, not. So up this morning, kind of doing the old Donald thing, which we chuckled about. Nobody else really kind of knows what that is, but when Donald Graves was here, Reverend Donald Graves, he would get up early in the morning and write a talk. He still does that. He can do a whole talk in like 2 hours, then he goes to church. So I spent some time kind of this morning researching this sentence, be the change you wish to see in the world. How many people know that Mahatma Gandhi really didn't say that? Yeah. So I like your song. No, it was actually paraphrased from something else that he actually said that they can find documentation for. But let's look at that sentence itself. And I'll give you some history about that. Be the change you wish to see in the world. How do you really do that? Have you ever asked yourself, you question, we think we know what that is. But that's what I want to talk about today. How do you go from having just a desire and a judgment about something and wanting things to be different? You have your presence, your thoughts, your actions, your behaviors, your reactions. How do you have that be in a way you want to present into the world? And I'm going to stay real close to my notes today since this is kind of fresh in my mind still. But I found some very interesting things for us. Gandhi's words were tweaked just a bit. There's actually no reliable documentation for him saying that sentence exactly as it is. The closest verifiable remark we can find goes like this. If we could change our lives, the tendencies in the world would also change. As a man changes his own nature, so does the attitude of the world change towards him. We need not see what others do. We need not wait to see what others do. So that's actually what he said in one of his talks. What he's telling us is that personal and social transformation go hand in hand, but Gandhi in his time, with an unjust authority, could only be overturned by gathering great numbers of people together to do their work, and to work with discipline and persistence. Like Martin Luther King, great numbers of people came together to work peacefully. And I bring those two names together because at this time, from January 30th to April 4th, we are in that season for nonviolence, which is 64 days of remembering peace and how can we work peace into the world. So interesting to learn that today. I just kind of learned all about that myself. I think I may have heard it at one time, but things don't stay in here very long anymore. There is a similar sentence that goes like this. Be the change you want to see happen instead of trying to change everyone else. That was from 1971. It was a magazine article called The Love Project, written by Arlene Lawrence. Arlene was a high school teacher in Brooklyn, New York. She was an agnostic, no religious upbringing really, and not unlike the story of Mary Baker Eddy with her Christian Science philosophy, Arlene was bedridden with heart disease. She asked for one more chance for her life. She underwent deep self-searching and had a spiritual revelation, and she created healing in her body, and she did change her life. She had a miraculous healing and was back to work at her high school. One day, a fight broke out in the auditorium of this ghetto high school in which she was teaching. And as she describes it, someone had to intercede. I knew I was being asked to see if I was fully ready to bring in what I had learned. I went forth without question or hesitation, bringing the power and force of love through my presence. I knew no fear. Perfect love had cast it out. I served as a conduit of peace in what could have been an arena of bloodshed. Arlene, over time, changed her high school and transformed it from a school of aggression to a school of learning and peace. And they made a real miraculous difference in their community. Gandhi did give us 10 rules for changing the world, so I'd like to tell those to you. Number 1, change yourself. How often do we say that? Start with the man in the mirror. If we could change ourselves, the tendencies of the world would also change. He did say that. Number 2, you are in control. What you feel, how you react to something, your personal perception of an event is always up to us. Each of us. How do we respond to something? We might overreact about things, but that's because of our beliefs that we have inside of us in our basic subconscious core belief system that we can actually work with. And that's what we teach here, is how to work with that. Number 3, forgive and let go. An eye for an eye only ends up making the whole world blind. Does that make sense? When my kids were little, one would, 2 little boys, one would throw the first little punch, and then the second one. And then the third one, because he punched me. And I'd say, stop that. And he'd go, no, he punched me. No, he punched me. I'm glad they didn't poke each other in the eye. Forgiveness frees you. We've said it many times in many different ways and does not condone the event or the other people involved, but it does release you from that bondage of that situation. Without action, number 4, without action, you aren't going anywhere. We have a saying in religious science that is treat and move your feet. Does that mean to go out and become a forceful activist in the world, physically pushing and fighting for a cause? No, not really. What it does mean, though, is to do your prayer work, know that consciousness, where you want to be in your desire, what you want to see, and to follow the guidance that then comes from that and leads you into the next step. What is the next step to bring change into your life, and that brings change into the rest of the world? Number 5, take care of this moment. Stay in the present moment. We can't do anything about the past, and we can't do anything too far in the future, but this moment right here, if you're good in this moment right here, everything right now is perfect. So put all of your attention in this moment right here. Number 6, everyone is human. We are all made of the same substance and of the one infinite mind and the source of creation. We all put our pants on one leg at a time. When I was coming up through the ranks in the corporate world, I was always afraid of the next boss I had. When I worked for the Olympics here in town, boy, I was scared to death because I had people from Geneva that I was working with, Switzerland and all, the mothership over there. And they'd come into town for the information stuff. And as long as I reminded myself that they're all human, they all put their pants on one leg at a time, just like I do, we got along fine. And it really leveled out the base. So everyone really is the same. But we are human. We all make mistakes on every level. And when we begin to put others on a pedestal, we actually run that risk of disconnecting ourselves from them and separating ourselves from them. We make them different. And then when that person makes a mistake, they fall. And the bigger they are, the harder they fall. But they're not the one that gets hurt. We're the one that gets hurt because we've lost our perception of who that person is. So we're all the same. We all come from the same source, and we all return to the same source. And if we compare ourselves to others, we end up shutting our own selves down. Number 7, persist. One reason Gandhi was so successful with his method of nonviolence was because he and his followers were so persistent. They didn't give up. Either did Martin Luther King. Be persistent. Hold on to your dream. In time, the opposition around what you may want to do and your dream, your desire, will fade away because you keep that single eye straight. That was a term of Ernest Holmes, our founder. Keep the single eye straight. Keep your thought and focus on that desire that you have. Personally, when I have something that's really important, when I want to create something or have a good result from something that I know could go either way, It's a real practice, but a focus to keep my thought, my desire, my sight, and my conversation only on that thing I want to have happen. If I step sideways and say, well, it could do this, or even if someone wants to come talk about that, I really just don't engage. Keep the single eye straight. And it's amazing that it really does work. I've even gotten out of speeding tickets that way. It's the simplest thing to the biggest thing. It does work. A lot of our inner resistance and self-sabotage tendencies that keep holding us back will also fade away. You keep your mind focused on what you want and be persistent. Number 8, see the good in people and help them. We all come from that spark of love and light, from that same substance and source. Within that next person in your experience, what's within the same thing with them is within you. You see their wholeness first and always. And that's everything a practitioner is taught. That's what we teach in our classes. See the wholeness always and first of every individual. And then help them when you can. And when you do that, you help yourself. You help the space around you. And it comes back to you or it pays it forward. But as we help others, we help ourselves and we bring all those up with us. Number 9, be congruent, be authentic, be yourself. When words and thoughts align, it shows through our communication, through our presence, through our behavior. You came here to express the divine as you. So let that shine, let that come forward, let that guide you into your next step. And number 10, continue to grow and evolve. Constant development is the law of life. And as you grow and evolve, you uplift those around you and the world together, because we're all in this as under the one. The divine presence is always growing and expanding, so you be that also. So those are the 10 points from Gandhi that he left with us. So now comes kind of a funny piece of this. I always meditate and I vision on what I'm going to talk about and what I'm going to do. And when visioning comes forward, whatever you receive in visioning, you don't change it, or don't reinterpret it. You just listen to it as it comes forward, and that's what you do. So I always honor that process. So here's what came up for me. Does anybody remember who Ty Webb is? Ty Webb is the fictional character, the talented golfer, played by Chevy Chase in Caddyshack. Be the ball, Danny. Do you remember Be the Ball? I was stunned when this came up. I have watched this scene over and over again on YouTube and just laughed. But, okay, Ty Webb had some really interesting things to say that when that movie came out, I didn't understand. And today, we live it here. So here's what happens. And I was going to bring a golf club to kind of show this, but I could just picture it in my mind skimming across those lights like a rock on the water. So I'm just going to pretend. So, Ty Webb and Danny, his caddy, walk out onto the green. And the first thing he says is, "I really like you, Betty." Danny says, "My name is Danny." Ty says, "I like you, Danny." Okay. And then Ty goes into his words of wisdom. There's a force in the universe that makes things happen. And then he puts on a blindfold. Do you remember this scene? He puts on a blindfold, and then he stumbles for his golf club. And then he says, all you have to do is get in touch with it. Stop thinking, let things happen, and be the ball. Lines up the shot, blindfold. Kind of reminds me of Yoda, but Yoda wasn't playing golf. Lines up the shot, and blindfolded he says, find your center, hear nothing, feel nothing. And then he hits the ball. Pew. Still got his blindfold on, and the ball lands just inches from the cup. And Danny goes, wow, that was really good. And so Ty Webb says, you try it. And Danny's like, I don't think I can do that. And he goes, sure you can. So he puts a blindfold on Danny, and he lines Danny up at the ball, and then Ty becomes that still small voice. And he gets real close to Danny, and he says, just relax, Find your center. Picture the shot. Danny, picture the shot. Turn off all the sound and just let it happen. Be the ball. Be the ball, Danny. And Danny makes his shot. He's nowhere near the green, the call. It takes practice. It takes practice to hear that voice. It takes practice to recognize it and follow that voice, because we have all those other voices inside that want to tell us to do something else and that want to squash our dreams and our desires and any change that we might want to do to step forward. So listen to the voice, and you can do it blindfolded or not. But that's what came up, and I thought that represented exactly what we try to say, because that's that guidance within us. And there is that force in the universe. It is that power and presence greater than us that we can use and tap into for what it is we want to do and change. So be the change you wish to see. So let's put this into some science of mind terms. What are we living from? We are being what we live from, not always what we want to see or how we think things should be. Are you aware of that? What comes out from us in our lives is a representation of what's inside of us. It's always what we're coming from. Reverend Donald, who was the minister here until the end of 2005, had a statement he said in every class, so I'll paraphrase him: your beliefs are your laws. If you're not sure what you believe, look at your life. Because what's happening in your life around you is what the laws are subconsciously within. And so our life becomes an outpicturing of that between our conscious and our subconscious thoughts and desires. So let's put ourselves personally into this. How often have you wanted something so much, not just in your personal life, but for the planet, and maybe nowadays for the other side of the planet with everything that's going over there, and it's kind of reaching its tentacles around. But how often have you wanted something so much that you really want to push? You want to push to make that change, and you want to fight, and you want to push that obstacle or that interference out of the way. The push can be as simple as a judgment or a thought, because thoughts are things, and they're alive. It can be as forceful as a physical battle, wishing you could go over there and fight for what you think is right. In being the change we wish to see, we make a mental equivalent. Do you know what that is? Have you come across that in your reading yet? We make a mental equivalent, an inside picture, an ideal, an essence of what it is we want to make a change for in our lives. That's the mental equivalent, and that's what we actually create from. So here's a quote. Ernest Holmes, Science of Mind, page 125, paragraph 4. Thought is an inner movement, which is largely the result of one's perception of life and his reaction to it. Every time this movement takes place, it takes place in mind, upon cause, according to law. We are dealing with the same power that molds the planets and all that is upon them. And the limit of our ability to use this power is not in principle, but in our understanding of it. So what if you were actually so fully and deeply in the substance of the divine, the substance of that source, that there was really no difference, no boundary between you, your body, you, your thought, and that divine substance that created you? It gave each individual the power of creation like it has. We co-create with that, and that's why our lives look like what they do. That's why we're talking about be the change you wish to see. That's why we talk about thoughts or things. So what if you actually could feel that and work from that place? Have you ever had one of those cosmic moments where that happened and it felt different, that something in your life moved? I've only had it happen a couple of times, really. As long as it's taken me to read this stuff, I've been reading metaphysics and lots of stuff for many years. And it's only been every now and then that I've been able to really feel what that cosmic moment is like, to actually feel like I am that presence. And it's amazing. And that's what I guess we strive for, isn't it? And that's how we make our changes. Science of Mind, page 195. As we sow, so we must reap. But here there is no limitation, for the creative life wishes us to have all that we can use. If we keep our thought fixed upon the idea of this energy, which is also intelligence, it is now taking the form of some desire in our lives, then it will begin to take this form. I'm going to read that sentence again. If we keep our thought fixed upon the idea that this energy, which is also intelligence, is now taking the form of some desire in our lives, then it will begin to take this form. If we change the desire, then it will change the form. Therefore, you must have a definite purpose in your imagination. So as you are thinking that law, that power, that mechanism that makes it so, it is the fifth step in the spiritual mind treatment. We release it into that law that makes it so, It takes our thought and creates from that. Yes. We're really saying, Jesus, the great teacher. Matthew 7:7. Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you. In that we are saying the same thing. Jesus came here to teach us that it really can be that simple if you're in that understanding, if you're in that presence, if it's filling you like it intended to be. It's coming from here. It's what we are coming from. And we receive it, and it is given. So, if you want peace, be peaceful to yourself first. If you want more abundance, be abundant to others and to yourself. How often have we denied to give ourselves something? If you want more love, like, and nurture yourself first. Thoughts are things. You become the magnet within the law of attraction to bring about the change that you wish to see. The law of substance, the medium, the law itself has no choice but to bring it to you the way you have expressed it, and in the form of your desire. It does what we tell it to do. And this is what we teach in our classes with our spiritual practices and our spiritual principles. So now in our thoughts, we can have a conflict about different things. Sometimes some of those deep down, quiet, subconscious thoughts that we don't know about can negate or neutralize a desire. And that's where the practice of letting things come up forward and doing our personal work, no matter which spiritual practice it is, allowing to discover that, we can learn what our core principles are and learn to change those so that our desires can start coming forward the way we would like them to. Does that make sense? Yes. So if there is something you desire and don't think you can find the right words, or not sure if it's something you think you can create, or not quite sure how to kind of go about that, see a practitioner. We have lots of them here. They are trained to take this process and pray this with you and for you. Practitioners are trained to have the faith of God. And I use that term a lot. For me, it's an umbrella term. It's not a man with a white beard sitting up there pointing and throwing lightning bolts at people and punishing. It's an umbrella term for me, and I use it intermingling with lots of other terms about that creator source. But as a practitioner, we have the faith of God because we are made of that, of the divine, and it is that faith that brings these prayers and these desires forward. So if you're not quite sure about how to speak what you want in a desire, see a practitioner and have faith in their faith. So here's one more quote from the character named Socrates from the book The Way of the Peaceful Warrior by Dan Millman. You have many habits that weaken you. The secret of change is to focus all your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. So here's my question for you this week. Since life mirrors back to us what we believe on a conscious and a subconscious level, my question is, how will you effectively notice what your core beliefs are? What is the change you wish to see in the world? And how will you see that within yourself first? So let's take that into prayer. So centering here. I recognize in this space is the all and everything of the divine, of that thing I call God, of that presence that creates even out of itself the planets that we speak of, the all and everything, the thing that is closest to each individual and the thing that is even the furthest from each individual. It's all created from that one source of love, of order, of light, of abundance and beauty and joy and freedom. Anything within the thought of each individual, anything within the life of each individual that outpictures itself and chooses to be changed by that individual is easily accepted in that ideal presence. For each individual in that connection to God, in that connection to the divine, is allowed that space to choose and to seek its own desires and to continually expand and express itself in that good. And so life continues in that way, unfolding and evolving, and each individual evolves. And as each individual does, the world is lifted. And that divine spirit knows itself a little better in the excitement of that. Claim and know that each individual here present today is here not by accident. For the idea of change is comfortable for some and uncomfortable for others. But it's all the same in the gift of life and in the joy of movement. And knowing that change is ever constant, we allow growth to happen in love. We allow growth to happen in the way that allows each individual to expand itself. And even as each individual thinks about changes that happen not only within their personal world, in this community, but around this planet, we recognize that God is everywhere in all of that. And so we allow that love and light to remold itself within each person's heart and expand out and vibrate around this world. So that love and peace and an order and harmony that is that divine presence can be expressed and can be felt. And we call that good and very good. And we allow that to come forward in ourselves as prominently as it can, reaching out to all others. And so we allow grace in that and blessing. And as always, as each and every individual on this planet is of the one, we bless every teacher, rabbi, minister, and everyone who brings this word of the divine to their people in whatever language and format that is. For it is all of the one, all paths lead to that one expression. And so in absolute joy and gratitude, in love and grace, I release this into the law. Let God be God. Let that thing expand as itself in good in every direction, in every way, in every space. And so here and now, knowing this blessing is upon each heart in this room, together we say, and so it is.